So I know I'm late reviewing Superman and Lois Season 3's finale. My God. Oh my. Oh my, oh my. I'm kind of glad that I waited this long, because I heard everyone going crazy about it, and I suppose that could have been a bad thing, because I could have been overhyping the episode, but I don't think it was. Like, that ending... I knew there would be a cliffhanger, but even I almost feel naive when I was watching it. I was expecting this cliffhanger, but I still didn't expect it to end there. So I still got that authentic reaction of like, wait, what? You're ending it right there? So guys, this is going to be my recap, review, and breakdown for the season finale. Can't wait to see what you guys have to contribute down in the comments below, and like this video if you do go on to enjoy it. What an episode of Superman and Lois, and seriously, God, like, there's quite a bit to discuss with the way things went down. Right at the beginning, we have Lois saying it's been 32 days since Lex was released. I literally wrote on my bullet point here, oh my, a month later. I kind of forget that Superman and Lois genuinely between episodes, like, skips a whole, like, 4 to 5 weeks sometimes, which is insane. And she's talking about after that setback, 17 years that is, who do you become? And I was just thinking, well, I think we still know who Lex Luthor has become. But this is, to be honest, with that monologue from Lois at the beginning, a larger commentary on what we can discuss in future videos of what to expect from Season 4. Because in all reality, as much as a lot of us are impressed by Michael Cudlitz as Lex Luthor, we've only really been teed up with what he can do. I feel like there's a lot to, fill in with the background details. We only know about his daughter, very sparingly so, that they're no longer in contact. We know that he threw his wedding ring on the floor, so we knew he was a bad guy back in the day, even referred to as the devil. But what do you become after 17 years? Now, obviously, everyone's a bit wary because nobody has heard anything from Lex Luthor since he turned up to the Kent farm at the end of last episode, which was over a month ago. Now, as for Kyle and Chrissy, after making her breakfast in bed, she throws up, and lo and behold, she is pregnant. Later on, he even proposes to Chrissy, and, this is what I think what a lot of people mean with how this episode sets up certain stories or arcs with characters, and where maybe it's just that much more believable if a lot of them don't come back next season, or barely come back, if that makes sense. Because Kyle and Chrissy, maybe they start a new life somewhere else, maybe not. I think there is some stuff you could dig into there, like Kyle loves Smallville. But then there's John Henry, Lana, and Nat. This episode, he made up an excuse to go to a house. They go out for drinks, they have a great time, if you know what I mean. And I always thought that would be manifesting in the finale. It was just a bit of a slow burner this whole season. But long story short, they had a bit of a story that, the DoD wants him to explore more of his gadget building for them in Metropolis. This is great for Nat because she can enroll in the DoD program, which Mateo happened to enroll in recently. So it just felt natural that, we might not see them as much, or even though it seemed that Lana wasn't going to go with them, maybe that happens. I mean, she did say, after all, I'm just going to have to give you a good enough reason to not want to go. Something like that. Yeah, quite a saucy scene there, but a bit hard to believe if Lana goes, because she's now the mayor of Smallville, and would it be so believable if she left? It's a bit of a hard task, if you will, for the writers to write a really believable reason as to why each of these characters are going to barely be in next season, with, again, some of them, like General Lane, not being in it at all. Then back with Lois and Clark, they turn out to have a very nice time. I think they actually fly to Italy, to Talro's villa, which is where they actually propose on going on holiday with the boys to. And obviously with Lois, with the surgery, she has huge insecurities that we've had very thoroughly explored in scenes with her talking to Lana and whatnot. She wasn't really ready to be intimate. But Lois finally took the plunge with Clark, and they seem, really happy-go-lucky together when they fly back, and they're at the Kent farm telling the boys about a trip to Italy. So it's nice seeing Lois in better spirits. And, one thing I will say is that the cancer storyline hasn't been so, wrapped up, I guess, but maybe it doesn't really need to be, because after the surgery, we did hear last episode when she responded to Lex that her doctors were optimistic about the prognosis of everything. So I think we're just meant to assume, or especially by the time Season 4, Episode 1 picks up, she would have made potentially a full recovery. And I would expect that, because I don't think they're going to keep that storyline going on all the way throughout season 4. Now, when we have Chrissy tell Clark and Lois that she's pregnant, this is when Clark hears that Judge Reagen has been murdered. And it was a message to Lois because she got killed right outside the Daily Planet, as Lois said herself, that Lex is going after everyone he blames for putting him in prison. Judge Reagen was the first. She just sentenced him. And I wonder why Lex didn't give Judge Reagen, why did he murder her? Because you would have thought this would have been like a jury trial where there was evidence. As Lois said, she just sentenced him. You know, the judge did according to what the jury would have decided in terms of when the evidence was presented, Lex was guilty. I know I might be looking into this a bit much, but I guess you could say that the judge decided the sentence and how long it would have been. But yeah, I don't know. I just feel like, Lex, if you're giving Lois a chance to, retire from being a journalist, what about the poor judge? Maybe stop practicing law? Now, this is when we're back at the diner. Clark talks to Jordan about wanting to make a difference in the world. If that's your true north, you'll never need the other stuff about, the ego stroking of taking photos that Jordan did in the previous episode. Which is when, in between this, we have Sam Lane and Gretchen get a bit saucy in an alleyway of Smallville, and she completely betrays him. And he gets put in the car after being tasered. And ladies and gentlemen, I present to you the final scene we'll ever see of Sam Lane in the show. Jokes aside, I'll talk more about this at the very end when we kind of break down the ending of this episode and, going into season 4 and what that means for certain characters and stories. And this, guys, is when things started to really ramp up. So again, up until this point in the episode, it felt like a lot of kind of sweeping around, like not in a bad way. It's just like making sure certain character stories were obviously set up or directions of where they could be going. But this is when Natalie tells Lois and Clark that Sam Lane isn't answering his texts. And Clark hears that the phone is vibrating in the alleyway, which is when we cut to Lex and we have a freaking cow being brought in to feed Zombaro. Lex is talking about, okay, Sam Lane's taken care of, good. Now Superman is the only one left to protect Lois. So again, it's that systematic takedown of his access to get right to Lois is to obviously get rid of Sam Lane and Superman. But again, when we think about season 4, he's not remotely taking into account that there is another superpowered Superboy in the family, which is why season 4 that's one of the reasons of what makes the prospect of all of that very exciting. And this is when he says, it's time to go kill the Man of Steel. And I wrote in my bullet point here, why though? I want to know why. Now, what I'm talking about there is, I do know why, because he wants to clear the path to get to Lois Lane. 2 people protecting Lois Lane. This has been made explicitly clear, is that he wants to get rid of Sam Lane and Superman. But I just feel like, it really does feel like that is the only context to Lex Luthor and Superman's relationship in this iteration of Superman. The only beef he has against him, probably on top of some traditional perspectives from Lex not liking him and how he takes the piss out of him being in a cape and tights and how he's not a hero later on. Maybe he's always just not liked him. But it apparently seems to me that there's been no history other than I'm going to get rid of you and kill you because you're kind of directly in my way to stop Lois. So to be fair, it is more of a reflection of a Lois Lane villain rather than a Superman villain. And that's not me putting down Michael Cudlitz, by the way. I think he's a great Lex Luthor from what we've seen already. But I'm a bit concerned that there is absolutely nothing to Superman and Lex Luthor's independent relationship outside of Lois Lane. It's just that he's simply in the way. And that's it. And it's not a whopping problem, but it's just a bit, Lex and Clark / Superman usually have something there. And I do want to make this clear as well. I have absolutely no issue with Lex having a major beef with Lois, even more than Superman, in terms of with what story there is specifically right now. She's the main contributor to what put him away. That's not my issue. It's just that can exist also while a Superman and Lex Luthor history can also exist. It's just that there's only one thing that exists, apparently, and that is Luthor and Lois, but not Luthor and Superman, other than just Superman once again being in the way. That's it. Hey, you're just like a bodyguard to the person I actually just want to get to, so that's the only reason I'm going to kill you, not because of our beef 18 years ago, 19 years ago, 20 years ago. I mean, I heard about you, I never really liked you with your cape and your tights, but you've never really done anything to me personally. I just want to kill you now because you're in the way. That's it. That's the only history there. So this is when we got into the 33 days ago flashback, and I'm glad that they did this because one of my criticisms at the end of last episode is that it was really hard to believe that Lex would go and confront Bizarro Superman and walk out of that situation alive. And the reason why I also felt like that as well is because they had the intel going into that subway cave that there was something dangerous down there, and he only walked in there with Otis. It's just, it makes me question Lex's intelligence, right? If he's willing to risk his life doing that. And it's very convenient in the writing as well that Bizarro Superman went to kill Otis first. But he didn't. Otis survived. His ear was munched off. And it turns out this is when Lex learns what he wants to do with Bizarro, because Lex shot him down and kept killing him. And he realizes that every time he comes back, he gets stronger. And this is what led to some really, really cool scenes. And also in where I felt a lot of empathy for the inverse Bizarro. But also what kind of led into a bit of confusion. So Lex says here, I told you, every time you die, it just makes you stronger. This is a gift, a wonderful gift. If you let me help you, can I kill you again and again and again? And it's like, oh damn. And the reason why I felt a lot of empathy here, mixed in with confusion with how I should kind of understand this Zombarro character, is because Zombarro here, or I kind of want to say just inverse Bizarro, started crying. He understood, granted that he was chained up, he understood what Lex was saying. He understood how horrible this sounds, being imprisoned and killed again and again and again. And thus, he started showing emotion and started crying as the inverse Clark that we saw last season, when we finally got to actually have a conversation with him. He was actually a nice guy. And like we saw him in the flashbacks of his Earth. And granted, it was an opposite Superman who kind of liked the fame and everything like that. He was still a nice dude. Their family didn't work out so well compared to our version of the Kent family. But you see what I'm saying? So this is where the confusion comes in. So I felt bad that Zombarro here, or inverse Bizarro, was got to be subjected to this, and he started crying and everything. But the confusion lies for me in that, would he really make this decision? Because I thought the show had got rid of any quality of what was left before with the actual inverse Bizarro. I hope you're still with me there, because when you see him as a zombie, eating rats and all this stuff, acting like a literal zombie, right? You think, oh, okay, so this is Bizarro Superman who's been reanimated, but there's nothing left of the guy who got killed by Lieutenant General Anderson. So I'm like, okay, I can detach that from the character, and he's just nothing but a shell, right? This person who's going to be used as a weapon. But then you show scenes like this, in where he's chained up, he's very emotional, he's crying. Granted that he is a bit more Zombarro than what he was as inverse Superman. But I think the fact that he had the very capacity and intelligence to understand what Lex Luthor was saying and show emotion kind of makes me think that it's kind of hard to believe that he would make this agreement with Lex. Bottom line, without rambling about this too much more, all while I was really finding all of this stuff cool, like, don't get me wrong there, guys. You guys know how I look at things with the writing and what they're trying to establish. For a few moments, I was kind of thinking, so is he a Zombarro rabid animal, or isn't he? It was more believable for him to become Doomsday when he was completely mindless. Sure, Bizarro got brought back, but there was no personality left there. But now apparently, according to the show, he does have emotion and personality. I don't know. You may disagree with me. Maybe you see a little bit of where I'm going. I just wanted to put that on the table. I don't know if they did like a good enough job at really establishing, like, is he mindless? Or wait, is he kind of inverse Bizarro still? Like, where is he at? Maybe it all just comes down to, even though this is Bizarro Superman, he's been screwed around so much. He lost his whole family, got crack addicted to kryptonite, then got killed by Lieutenant Anderson, got frickin' reborn by Mannheim, became like an insatiable, hunger, needy kind of vampire zombie, and is now being, and he's just like, you know what? I'm crying because this is a shit situation to be in. If you want to make me a monster, screw it, just do it. Like, I don't even want to be me anymore. Just turn me into whatever this hulking Doomsday Zombarro is. Maybe that's what it is. And again, when you go throughout these scenes, it is mental. You see all of these weapons being used against Zombarro or Doomsday. I don't know what to call him. I'm just going to keep calling him Zombarro for now. The chainsaw, the spikes that sink into him, the gauntlets with the beams coming out, the flamethrower. And when that started happening, that's when the first mutation actually kind of made him look like, funnily enough, the Hulk. But still, after all of this, I just... again, maybe nitpicky for some, but why does he take orders from Lex Luthor? I just feel like there isn't enough detail or even exposition set up as to why this Doomsday takes orders from bloody Lex Luthor and even wants to adhere to killing Superman. But it's still freaking awesome anyway, though. I do have to say that. So meanwhile, with Clark out in space, listening in for General Lane, he darts off to the Kent farm because, of course, Lex Luthor has rocked up there. And again, this is what I meant by this earlier. All while I'm very kind of engrossed in this scene, this is the Superman and Lex Luthor of this CW canon iteration. Meeting, talking, and he's like, I won't let you hurt Lois or her family. And obviously Lex is going on about, I told Lois I was innocent, the case was built on a lie. You just realize my points of earlier are true. It's like there's cool energy here, but there's kind of like no history to these guys other than Superman being a bodyguard and Lois Lane's true villain here is Lex Luthor, or should I say vice versa. And you may say to me, by the way, next season they might get into some history for Lex and Superman's past, but I'm telling you now, like, I feel like they've kind of already ruled out, like, they've never really had anything before this. And if they were to put that in, it would almost feel inorganic to what they've already established here. I don't know. It's just a bit strange. As cool and conflicted as I am right now, because I find it really cool seeing this happen all the same. This is when Doomsday or Bizarro Day, I don't freaking know. And I have to admit, like, I agree with what a lot of people are saying. When you got the close-up of the shot with the flames behind him from the barn, it looked pretty crispy of a CG rendition of this character model. And from here on out, things just went nuts. Absolutely nuts. Doomsday immediately grabs Clark and bashes him around. He's like, when you're done, bring me his heart. So Superman lands in the main street of Smallville. Superman tells Lois, John Henry, Nat, and Jordan not to come. And I was just kind of thinking, like, well, what were you going to do anyway, running up to this freaking monster in the middle? No wonder Clark was just like, no, stay back. Doomsday would have just gone, and they would have just like blown up like a grape. But I think my favorite moment was when they were all standing there stunned. Like, Tyler Hoechlin just gave this look as Clark, even though he was in Superman mode, to his wife Lois. And it's like he was telling her that this time, this is no joke. I am not sure if I can come out of this one in one piece. There was just that, when you have a scene like that with no words and it's just actors portraying a face and look to each other, yet the picture spells 1,000 words, that was fantastic. And it was really sad because you see that look in Superman's eyes and he's like, babe, I might not make it back from this one. They take it into the water, and Superman uses his freeze breath to literally make an iceberg out of Doomsday. And he tossed Doomsday's iceberg on top of like the building's spike, and he got impaled. Like, so Superman kind of knew here that he had to kill Doomsday if this was ever to be resolved, I suppose. So Superman goes down to the people of Metropolis, and he's like, it's okay. But as we know, guys, like, Doomsday doesn't stay dead for long. And this is when we had that song kick in, the lyrics being like, nothing seems to kill me no matter how hard I try. This is where it's like the show was really wearing everything on their sleeve. It's like, hey, we wanted to give you a cool moment. Enjoy this. We're just going all in. Play the freaking track, let's just go mental. And they did. So Superman gets slammed down all the way into the subway, and I have to say, with the amount of destruction here and nearby citizens, there's like no way people weren't getting obliterated. I find it interesting, and it's arguably true, that people were complaining about not enough Superman this season. Well, it's like now I think you know why. And I'm not even joking, by the way, when I say this. It's like they spent their whole budget on this ending, because to do what they did here would 100% mean sacrifices in previous episodes, just because it wasn't like a 30 to 45 second scene like we had with Henry Miller that was cool in Metropolis at the beginning of the season. This was like that times two again. It just kept going, and it was really, really awesome. So some of you may disagree with that. Maybe you'd prefer more action throughout the season, but I have to admit, all while I would have liked that as well, getting like a constant Doomsday smashing in Superman's face and vice versa, and all of these different environments and slow-mo shots, and actually decent RCG for the CW, I would say I'm glad that they went this route. Then we had the Hulk smash moments of when Doomsday was just beating Clark to a pulp. I love the flex that Doomsday did of just hovering, just holding Superman by the neck before taking off into space. Jordan even admits here that he can't hear his father breathing anymore, which is when we got that nice typical kind of cliche heroic montage of like, oh, the family shots are flying over the screen. I mean, I was very emotionally invested at this point, but when you kind of look at it, it's like, the family shots again, and that's when he gets the last wind to really try and shove it back into Doomsday's face. So they punch each other all the way to the moon, which I thought was a brilliant battleground to choose because obviously no destruction here, but moon rocks and dust. And so this is where Bizarro Day got the spikes out of his shoulder and uses them as shanks, and Superman flies into Doomsday, getting ready to wind up that punch again like what we saw in the subway, but hopefully this time he'll land it first. I don't know. And it ends there. Like, I was genuinely expecting that to continue on. And it's so funny, like what I said in this review earlier, I was like, okay, I knew there'd be a cliffhanger, but when you're so... I think they know when they're getting you, because they keep the fight going for quite a while, that even though you know this cliffhanger is coming, you don't expect it, arguably, when you think the fight's going to continue on for a while longer. I think because the precedent is set in our heads that this could be a death of Superman thing, or they might end it with a fatal blow, even though we know Tyler Hoechlin's going to be fine in the long run kind of thing. But no, they kind of keep unwinding the fight. They keep the CG fight of quality going for a lot longer than what you're used to, because normally they spend it very, very quickly and they can't keep it going for so long. So you keep getting this, and this, and then it just ends in the middle of it, of what feels like the middle of it. Do you know what I mean? So, wow. And what a cool final shot. And I just want to stress again that we could have really have not got Superman and Lois Season 4. And imagine if that ended there. But let's get into some theory time now, because I would love you guys to theorize about this down in the comments with me. There's quite a few things to address here with the ending, where things are going to go in Season 4. As of when Season 4, Episode 1 picks up. Like, what's going to happen? Is there going to be a time jump? Similar to how when Clark went into the inverse world and he didn't realize he was gone for so long. Or you could argue that they straight up resume where they left it off. But then I guess you could then ask, why end it on this cliffhanger of them just literally about to connect? The fight continues. He bests Doomsday and he just comes back to Smallville to be like, oh, hey, Lois, do you want to go to the Gazette and then maybe get a croissant afterwards? Like, it's a hard thing to suss out for me, even in terms of theories, because again, they could argue that who knows what happened to Superman in the first theory, and Lois is worried about it. But clearly Clark has done something right because Doomsday hasn't returned back to Earth. So maybe they're still fighting till the end of time. I mean, obviously not, because Superman almost died. So you would have to think if they fought for another 25 minutes that Clark would probably lose. I don't know. But that's theory number one. Time jump. It's left ambiguous. We don't really know what's going on. And maybe Jordan eventually flies up there to see what the heck is going on. Theory two, just carrying on the fight, but is it not somewhat anticlimactic if it could be a cool premiere opening? And as we know, episode ones of new seasons usually go a bit harder than other episodes. But still, even with that impressive opening of more CG right out the gate of the episode one, it just feels a bit anticlimactic to carry on the Doomsday fight. Doomsday gets croaked, and then, carry on the season. Do you know what I mean? You have to feel like they ended it on that cliffhanger to set up something more than what I'm thinking about right now. I mean, obviously, in the comics, or at least with the death of Superman, they basically beat each other to death. It would be kind of weird to go pure death of Superman route on top of the theories I just mentioned, because we know that Superman's going to be fine in the long run, and they won't waste too much time wondering about, is Tyler Hoechlin's Superman going to come back, because we've only got 10 episodes next season. Other things to consider, again, of course, in the plot for season 4 is Sam Lane with Lex. Sam Lane was captured. What are they going to do about that since he isn't returning? You're going to have to think it's going to be a line of dialogue, and wherever the heck's going on with Superman, since John Henry and Nat apparently aren't returning. To be honest, I need to look this up a bit more. There might be info out there on who might be coming back for an episode or two out of those 10. Even if John Henry and Nat isn't, on top of Sam Lane, Lois and Lana could be or there could be some kind of something written into the script in where, John Henry with the steel suit saved Sam Lane somehow from Lex Luthor. Again, it's a bit difficult because since we're continuing off of the plot from the finale of season 3, and Lex still wants to get to Lois, and Lex took Sam Lane. Why would he let Sam Lane get away so easily with John Henry? They're just gonna have to do something there. Unless, of course, they just say, oh, Sam Lane died. But that would be even worse, because it's like, he died off screen like that. That would be terrible. I mean, it is still pretty bad that, like, he got tasered and that's the last time we'll see him, even if we hear that he got saved by Steel or something like that. Yeah, it's just weird. You know, maybe they had a setup with him leaving the show if Gretchen was an actual love interest, but no, she works for Luthor. So let me know your ideas there. And then, of course, there's just the Lex Luthor story that I kind of went over earlier. I obviously couldn't help myself but talk about it at the time. There's a lack of history to him and Superman, but now next season, the fact that Lex Luthor has put Superman through all of this stuff because he wanted to get to Lois Lane, well, there's going to be a very big shared grudge from Clark and Lois against Superman, especially when, you know, Lex isn't going to quit here. I have to admit, guys, I don't know about you, but I know Lex is a genius and he's going to come up with something, arguably, but I don't know if the writers are, right? Like, how can you top that threat, a physical one like Doomsday? So that's why we might get some mind games next season. Maybe he interferes with the family in ways that we can't even foresee right now, maybe with Jordan and other things. It could be quite an interesting battle there. Maybe the best tool to use would be for Lex to actually find out the identity of Superman, so there's such a threat in that way of speaking, rather than a physical one, because again, they've already done something so big with Bizarro Doomsday. But to be fair, guys, I've been rambling for way more than long enough now, so I'm going to leave this off with you. If you're interested in me doing a bonus video on the ending in more of a Q&A discussion series format, and those of you who've watched my channel long enough know that I have quite a few of those running on the channel with the Batman or the DCU, let me know if you'd like to see a discussion series video with your questions. Feel free to ask me anything in this video's comment section about Season 4 theories, the way things ended with this, and I can do a whole video highlighting your questions and then just answering them and just going ham into what we just saw. So I thoroughly enjoyed the episode. Can't wait to read your comments down in that comment section. If you like this video, I'd appreciate you hitting that like button. Do consider subscribing, because we are getting a Season 4, and maybe as well you will like some other videos on this channel. But ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for watching. I hope you all have a lovely rest of your day, and I'll see you fellow Kryptonians in the next video. Goodbye.